In this video, we're going to do a demonstration of a post-sale walkthrough on a CRMF series furnace. This is a critical part of your customer training and is something you need to do with them prior to having them sign off on their post-sale checklist. During this presentation, we're going to be going through airflow, some of the key components of the furnace, some tips on installation, as well as basic operation and troubleshooting. So let's start with the airflow. When your furnace calls for heat, the Renco control is going to turn on your blower motor, and it's also going to start your actuator. Your actuator will slowly turn and open the damper plate inside the airbox. This allows your fresh air to blow down through the airbox, under the furnace, and into the ash pan. And to see where it goes from there, we'll move to the front of the furnace. So the air is flowing from your airbox on the back of the furnace and into your stainless steel ash pan. From the ash pan, the air is forced upwards through your cast iron shaker grates, and it comes through your coal bed and through the wood. And obviously, as it burns, it generates a lot of smoke and, of course, a lot more heat. So now that excess smoke comes up to the top of the firebox, and it goes through this curved bypass plate at the top, and it directs it to the back of the furnace. So that's what we call the first pass, where it begins transferring extra heat into the water jacket. From there, it moves up into the heat exchanger. So you'll notice that we have a divider plate. So as the air comes up out of the firebox, it comes into the lower channel, which is our second pass, comes up and then back through the top, which is our third pass. Again, giving you a higher efficiency and more heat exchange into the water. Finally, what little exhaust remains is going to go up and out through your chimney. So let's take a little closer look at the Renco control. The Renco basically controls all the functionality of your furnace, and it's what turns the blower motor and the actuators on and off when it calls for heat. The Renco comes set from the factory to heat your water up to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. It then will allow the temperature to drop 10 degrees, which is your differential, before it activates another heating cycle. The differential setting is something that you can adjust right through the control. To enter the programming, you're going to first press the set button. And then each time you press set, it will advance to another screen. So one of the first screens you'll come up with will say C or F. And this is where you select Fahrenheit or Celsius. We default to Fahrenheit. The next screen is your set point. So this is the temperature that the furnace will heat up to, and we traditionally have that defaulted to 180 degrees. Your next one, DIF1, is your differential, and that's how far the temperature will drop before it initiates another heating cycle, and the default for that is 10 degrees. Next up, you'll see we have C1 or H1. Make sure that your furnace is set to H1 because the C1 setting is for cooling, and it definitely will not work. So that's one of the things to always check if you're experiencing any weird situations with your furnace, it's not heating up properly. Always go back and check that in your control. And lastly, you'll see it displayed as D1, which is your delay. Again, that's another setting for cooling and not something that we use in our heating mode, so it should remain set at 0. And that's really all there is to it. So now that we've gone through the airflow, let's take a closer look at some of the key components of your CRMF series furnace. And let's start with the ash pan. Very simple to open, just lift your handle and slide it out. You also have a cross piece here, so you can pick it up with 2 hands, take your ash, dump it into your bin. Of course, you always want to use an approved steel container to prevent any types of fires. When you're done, just slide it back in. And you want to make sure that you get the faceplate square to the body so you get a proper seal. Now moving up to the firebox, we've talked about the shaker grates and how the air comes up through them. Shaker grates are also an important component of your cleaning system. So usually about once a week you're going to want to go and you're going to want to shake your grates, and that'll allow any burnt up ash or excess ash to drop out into your stainless steel ash pan. If you're having difficulty with making the shaker grates work, it also comes with this extension handle, which you can just slide on and get a little bit more leverage. Now, one of the other cool features with this setup is if you want to do a deeper cleaning and get out more ash or some of the clinkers, if you open your ash pan an inch or two, it'll now allow your shaker grates to drop down to about 45 degrees, meaning you can do a much more thorough cleaning. Another critical aspect of your customer training deals with maintenance. But rather than go through the whole spiel on maintenance as part of this video, I'll refer you to another video called How to Maintain Your C and MF Series Furnace. And you'll find that in another section of the Level 1 curriculum. But for now, what we're going to do is talk about a few tips and techniques that you're going to want to consider when you're performing your installation. And for that, we'll start at the back of the furnace. Two of the key components when you're doing your installation are going to be your underground line and your power supply. Now, typically in most furnaces, we recommend using a 1-inch Rhino-Flex underground line because of the quality and the efficiency of the product. Now, if you're getting into a situation when you're running more than 100 feet in any one direction, then you may want to consider moving up to 1 1/4 inch or a 32 millimeter line. But every scenario will be different, but when you get to those higher lengths, it's something to consider. When you're running your power cable from your house to your furnace, you want to make sure you use an underground rated line, and the load you're going to be carrying is up to 15 amps. Now, when you bury your line and your cable, you want to typically dig anywhere from 18 to 36 inches deep, depending on your area and your type of ground surface that you're digging. You normally want to start by digging your trench and putting in a layer of gravel or sand at the bottom for drainage, then run your underground cable, your power cable, and then on top of that, fill in your underground pipe. When you come to the furnace, you'll notice there's a series of knockouts in the floor. With this furnace, we have the ability to run 2 different supply and return lines without having to tee them off. So you'll select the knockout in the floor, which lines up best with your pump or your pipe. And basically, you can pull out your styrofoam, and then the bottom plate will just knock out, allowing you to run your pipe up and into the furnace. If you already have your pipes in place and you want to install the furnace, you can also remove the screws in the bottom of the sill, which then gives you full access from the back, and you can just slide the furnace into place and then reinstall the sill after that. When it comes to pumps, you always want to make sure that you install your pump at the furnace, not in the house, so that it's pushing the water rather than pulling it. And you want to make sure you install it on the supply line and not your return. Now, both your supply and returns do come with a factory installed isolation flange, which is really important. If you ever had a pump fail and had to be replaced, you're able to shut off that water, replace the pump without having to drain the furnace. The other thing, once you've installed your pump, is make sure you have the water flowing in the right direction. It sounds kind of funny, but it does happen from time to time. And on most pumps, you'll notice that there is an arrow built into the cast housing that shows the direction of the water. So make sure it's flowing down and to the house, and then your supply return line is coming back to the top. And that's some of the key things to keep in mind as part of your installation. Once you've completed your installation, everything's wired and hooked up on your furnace, the next step is to fill the tank with water. Well water is typically fine so long as you don't have a high level of iron or calcium, which can plug up the pipes and plug up your heat exchangers. When you're filling the fill tube on top, you want to keep an eye on your water level. So I like to every few minutes drop my gauge in, and once you're filled to about halfway full, you're good. Because as you heat up the water, it's going to expand and your level is going to come up. If you have it too full to begin with, it's probably going to overflow. Not a big deal, but it is kind of a mess. Once your water's filled, the next step is critical. In order to maintain your warranty, it's important to add the Heatmaster boiler treatment to your furnace. What the boiler treatment does is it protect against corrosion and the possibility of leaks in your furnace. It's specially made for us and not the same as some of the products that you'll find off the shelf. So only use Heatmaster boiler treatment. Once you've added your treatment, it's important to let the furnace circulate for about 48 hours. You want that water to go all through the furnace, all through all the plumbing in your home so it's thoroughly mixed. At that point, you need to take a water sample and send it into Heatmaster. So with your furnace, you're going to obviously have your owner's manual, and inside the manual, you're going to have a set of labels, and you'll also have 4 test bottles in the back of the furnace. So take your test bottle, and on the back of the furnace, you'll see the drain valve at the bottom. I like to crack it open just a little bit and make sure it's running clear so there's no sediment or anything on the bottom of the furnace. And then fill your bottle about 2/3 full and seal it up. Next come the labels. So fill out your label completely. It's preferred that you provide both your phone number and your email address. If you provide your email address, we will send you those results as soon as they're available. And it can take anywhere from a couple of weeks to 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the time of year and how busy we are. After filling out your label, you'll peel off one label, put it on the bottle, take the other label and put it on your shipping tube. Seal it up, add your postage, pop it in the mail, and you're done. Obviously, if we're going to create heat, we have to have fire. So that's what we're going to look at next. So you want to make sure the power is on the back of the furnace and also on the control panel, and that your pumps are running. With that taken care of, we want to build our fire. A couple of ways you can do it is you can do it the old traditional way, where you take your small pieces of kindling and your paper and you create your pyramid in the bottom, just like a campfire. Let that light, and then slowly add additional pieces of dry wood to it until you get a good fire going. If you're lazy like me and in a hurry, you can use larger pieces of kindling, take your propane torch, give it a good burn. As you start building a little bit of coal, continue to add smaller dry pieces of wood until you have a good base of coals in place, and then start adding your regular size cordwood. Once that's done, close up your door and give it a little while to make sure that it stays lit. So come back in about 10 or 15 minutes and check it out. Again, when you open your door, open to the first crack, let the air come in and clear out the smoke, and then open it the rest of the way, staying behind your door in case there is a blowback. So check that your fire is burning good, add wood, and typically once you get it up, burning good up to about the height of the door, now you can start just a regular heating cycle. So not a whole lot to it, and for some people, they light it once at the start of the season and they're good for the year. Now after you've got your fire going and your furnace has been running for a while, it's not uncommon to see a lot of condensation within the furnace, and that's normal from the moisture that's already inside the furnace, plus the cold water in the water jacket. So if you see water dripping down anytime within the first 3, 4, even 5 days, it's not something to worry about. Just keep an eye on your water gauge, and as long as your water gauge isn't dropping down, it's perfectly normal. Another thing to keep in mind when you're loading your furnace is try not to overload it. Typically, once you've used it for a while, you'll have a good idea of how much wood you need to put in order to last the 12 hours until your next fill period. So don't overload it, because what will happen is it'll sit and it'll smolder and all that moisture will come out of your wood. And that's when you get issues with creosote buildup and things getting sticky. So it might seem like a great idea to fill it once every 2 days and not worry about it, but in the long run, take it slow, only fill it a little bit, and you'll have a lot less headaches down the road. Next, we're going to finish up with a few troubleshooting tips to make your life easier. Now, it's not uncommon for users to have issues with their furnace going out periodically. And typically you'll see that in the spring and the fall where the weather is warmer. And what happens is your furnace doesn't cycle on and off often enough in order to keep your fire going or your coal bed established. So there's a few things we can do to try and correct that problem. One, the simplest, is to open up all your windows and turn the heat on the house for a while in order for that furnace to run longer and start building up a coal bed. Obviously, that's not right for everybody, but it's a great place to start. Secondly, you can make an adjustment on your control. Now, we talked about it earlier. On your control, you've got your set temperature, which is 180 degrees. And then typically you have a 10-degree differential, so it comes on at 170. Using your control, you can adjust that differential down from 10 to 5 degrees. So now it'll come on every time it drops 5 degrees instead of 10. So it basically cycles much more often, and that will help maintain the cold bed as well. And then finally, there is an adjustment that you can make on the air box itself, and I'll show you that on the back. On the air box of your C-Series furnace, a lot of people don't realize this, but there's a small little damper on the left-hand side behind the actuator. And you can actually adjust that, and what it will do is allow a little bit of air to constantly come in through your air box. And usually that's just enough to keep that fire burning. It's much more common in people who are burning coal because they have to have that constant source of air. So you can try opening that up a bit. Any of these changes, try them for a day or two, see if they work. If all else fails, there is the ability to adjust your actuator motor as well, which is going to change how much your damper plate opens. So it's going to control the air a little bit differently in and out of the firebox. But we only recommend doing that in consultation with a certified dealer or with a Heatmaster factory rep. So if you run into that situation, let us know and we'll give you some instructions on dealing with that. Now the next issue that you may run into with your C or MF series furnace is the furnace overheating. Now what typically happens is once the furnace water temperature gets up to about 195 degrees, your high limit switch is going to pop, and that's going to basically turn the power off to your furnace. So your control will shut down, your damper will close, and it's going to try and seal off the furnace in order to bring that temperature down. So even though it's shut off, that temperature can still rise and potentially get over 200 degrees and potentially even boil or steam over a little bit. So we want to figure out what the cause is. Why is it doing that? And 9 times out of 10 is because there's some type of air leak within the system. But fortunately, it's usually pretty simple to find out where that leak is. So with your furnace running and the blower motor going, the simplest solution is to put your chimney cap on temporarily or put a piece of plywood or something, and basically you want to cut off the air on your exhaust. And so what that does is causes back pressure, and now wherever we see a leak, that smoke is going to be coming out of the furnace. So once you've done that, check around your air box, the seals, particularly check at the bottom where it bolts to the bottom of the furnace, where it goes into the ash pan, because over time you can potentially see some leaks there. All it takes is a little puff of smoke, because if the smoke can come out, the air can get in. The other place that you're going to want to check is around all of your door seals. So you want to check on your ash pan door, so check the gasket, make sure there's no cracks, big buildup of silicone or creosote. Same thing on the firebox door, and then again on your heat exchanger door on top. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to have a small little leak in one of those places, and it's very easy to fix either by adjusting the hinges on your door or by replacing that gasket. And if you do need to replace a gasket, we do have a video available how to replace the gasket on your furnace. So plenty of resources, and we'll get that situation solved. Another situation you may run into is your furnace not coming up to temperature or taking a long time to get to your temperature, or not having enough heat to keep your house warm. In the last section, we talked about air leaks. Well, this is the exact opposite. Normally, this is caused by an air blockage. So there's a few key places that you want to check to see if your airflow is being interrupted. And the first one is going to be down in the rear of your ash pan. So if you take out your ash pan, you'll notice that the back of it is open, and that's so that the air can flow in from your air box and up through your cast grates. So what you want to do is get a nice bright light and look in through the back of the furnace. And you may see that you've got a buildup of ashes, which is actually blocking the airflow from the air box into your ash pan. It also helps if you empty your ash pan a little more regularly, so that when you slide it out, you're not dropping ashes off the back. So that's the first place that I would check. The next common place to look for air blockages is going to be in your first bypass, which is your curved bypass plate in the top rear of the firebox. So this is where it goes into the firebox, goes up, and makes a 90-degree curve into your heat exchanger on top. Now, if you do have a blockage there, we will be talking about that again in the maintenance video that's coming up in the program. Once you've confirmed that there's no blockage there, check your heat exchanger, make sure there's no big buildup of creosote along your divider plate, and then also check in your chimney. Where it first comes from, your heat exchanger up at the chimney, and it's a great idea every now and again to get up on top, shine a light down inside, and make sure you're not getting a buildup of creosote. Not only will that keep your furnace running more consistent, but it also will help prevent any instances of getting a creosote buildup and a potential chimney fire.